If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to Why Write. Hi, welcome to Why Write. I'm your host, Angela Grout, in studio today with another guest that is a wonderful writer and poet. And we're going to talk to him today, not only about all of his writing and his publishing, but we're going to talk about how he got an interest to write in the genres that he does. His name is Thomas John Skarzynski, and he is right here from Western Massachusetts. And besides writing poems and novels, he also has been writing articles, and he wrote for a various amount of newsletters and newspapers, with a lot of his first publications being in the Springfield Journal. His poetry books have been published through Metaphysical Fox Press, and we're going to discuss that publishing journey, of course, as well as his passion to write poetry, because he has a book called Echoes of Reflection. I want to welcome Thomas John Skarzynski to the show.
Hey.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm so glad to have you here.
So far, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we've kind of crossed paths a few times over the years, but most recently we did an artist-author event in Longmeadow, and I got to see your work, and I was like, we got to talk about this. This is exciting. It's very exciting.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming in. So I have to ask, of course, I always ask all the authors who come in, what got you into writing? When did you start?
How many hours do we have to talk here?
We have all day. All day.
I'll still try to keep it the condensed version. Really, it's something I've been interested in all my life. I mean, really, all of us start off as a child with creative abilities. It's just something that comes natural. You know, my teddy bear says hi, and you know, and you're you're doing dialogue,
interactive play,
and it grows out of that. And I've always taken that to a higher level. Making up stories is something that came naturally to me, and I've also have a great love for music, and although music never really came naturally to me, I've always felt that lyrics were basically poetry put to music.
Yeah, 100%.
And I knew I could write a story, or I could make up a story, so I started writing poetry. And then, of course, I was introduced to the works of Robert Frost, and that was like, whoa! There's, this is a thing.
I mean, Robert Frost. They have a show that they did about his life. It was at the Majestic Theater. Of course, it travels around, and the actor portrays Robert Frost reading some of his poetry and kind of writing some of his poetry sitting on the front porch. And I always found it fascinating because he'd look at the audience, kind of break that fourth wall. And he was, wrote this poem, and he's writing it. And he's like, the sun was setting, the leaves were falling, and whatever. And and everyone reads that and they always say, what does it mean? What's the meaning behind it? He goes, the meaning, I got up one day, I sat on my front porch, the sun was rising, the leaves were falling. Like, he was just writing what was happening in the moment. But so many people want to, interpret the words, into something. And I think sometimes they interpret the words into something that means something for them,
Yeah.
When you're writing poetry, when do you think about the audience? Do you just write in that moment? Are you doing the Robert Frost?
Pretty much the Robert Frost thing. It's just, poems come to me very naturally.
Yeah.
A story I have to think about, okay, where is this going? And even with the stories, I never really know how it's going to end, which gives me a good incentive to write it so I can find out what's going to happen. But with poetry, I mean, very strangely enough, a lot of my poetry comes to me when I'm in the shower.
Oh.
It's something about the magic of water or something, but
Well,
it's like a portal opens in the top of my head and the poems just...
Yeah.
I'll start thinking about, usually it's word combinations that have a nice sound, a nice ring to it.
The cadence.
And it's like, and I'll start building on it. Okay, and then, where can I go with this? And we can add this and that'll, and next thing I come out of the shower, it's like, I got to go run over and write this down.
Standing there in his towel writing for 4 hours later.
Yeah, well, the poems take very short time. I mean, they come out of my head almost as is. I'll do a little tweaking. I'll sit down and go over them a few times before I actually finish it. But for the most part, they're
sometimes I think
there.
that it is the authentic first draft that comes out is what is supposed to be heard. And, poetry is like music and like stories. I mean, you got to catch it when it's in the air,
Yes.
You got to catch it. If you don't put that fishnet out and catch it right then,
Absolutely. It's actually kind of scary because I'll have something I think is really sounds really good in my head as I'm finishing my shower. It's like, I got to hurry up. I got to hurry up because a little thing could happen. The phone could ring or something like that, and then it's gone. It's just I try to catch it, and it's like nope.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I mean, I think that's just like the beauty and the magic of like the universe and the gifts of the universe that come to us,
Yeah, very much.
So, we're talking about your poetry, but then we also were talking about how you're a very creative storyteller. And you actually wrote a book in like the 80s, one of your first books, right?
Yes.
And you were just showing this to me, so I want to just show this because I think it's so fabulous. You wrote this book and then hand stitched the pages together and right here, and made the binding, and it's like, this is amazing because this is, you want a book made, this is what you do. Now this book you rewrote into the Journey of Druidwood.
Journey to Druidwood. Yes.
So that book, how long has that book been out? That's the edited version of the one you did in the 80s.
Yes, that's been out, I think, a couple of years now.
Okay.
It's been a couple of years. It was probably just about 2 years because the poetry book is about a year. So okay. I published out a year after I did that.
Because what's fascinating to me is I'm jumping ahead here, but I know you're working on yet another book right now, and you have the prose book and you have the poetry book, but it sounds like this next book's kind of bringing them both together.
It does. There is a bit of, actually what happened with that is I came up with a poem that sounded really nice, so I sent it to my editor for the poetry book, and because he's a fellow poet, that's why I met him.
Okay.
And we both kind of like write similar genre. We're very much into nature and that sort of thing.
Fantasy, because I know you write. I didn't even say that in the beginning. More fantasy.
Well, more with him and I, it's more the nature thing.
Okay.
And so it was a poem about a tree or the lack thereof, and his comment on it was, because he usually gives me feedback and we give each other feedback on our poetry, was his name is Robert Eugene Perry, by the way.
Okay.
His feedback was that this needs to be in a fantasy story. Mm-hmm. And I was like, gee, I'm in the process of writing a sequel to my Druidwood story.
Yeah.
And I think I can find a place for that in there. So
yeah,
there it went.
So the Druidwood story is about, tell the audience a little bit about what that's about, because it is interesting to me how you bring nature and, I want to use the word fantasy.
The title really says a lot. It's a journey. Mm-hmm. Actually, the original book was called the Druid, the Elf, and the Unicorn. It was kind of a takeoff on the Land of Witch and the Wardrobe things.
I hold this one up.
And
cool.
So
I'm sidetracking you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm like one of those squirrel
I know.
watchers.
I'm like, I grabbed that.
So the original was named that, and when I rewrote the story, because I basically used that as basically like a bare bones, because it needed a lot of correction, a bare bones
like your
outline for the story, yes, and I created a lot more of a story out of it. And the person that did the first reading and gave me editing suggestions on that, she suggested that I change the name.
Okay.
And I came up with
the name of the book.
The name of the book,
okay.
Yes. And I came up with Journey to Druidwood because anytime you mention a journey in the beginning of a book, it automatically grabs the reader and, okay, where's this journey going?
Really? That's good because I have an angel's journey.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We have journeys.
You know what we're talking about.
I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I changed the name to that and expanded. I made the characters much more believable. They weren't spouting cliches every other sentence and all that sort of thing that bad writers do or new writers do.
Well, trying to come up with characters and giving them their whole personality can sometimes be challenging.
Yes. And plus my characters are like dwarves and, well, I don't have any dwarves, but I've got gnomes and elves and druids, and there's this sorceress that plays a very important part who is actually a changeling, and that gets very interesting.
Oh,
that introduces
a changeling. That's interesting. I always hear like shapeshifter.
Shapeshifter. Yeah.
I like that changeling.
Yes. She does. She's gets them out of a lot of their. She's sort of their. If I can borrow a character from J.R.R. Tolkien, Gandalf, he's kind of like the wizardly guy. To say, all right, guys, let's do it this way. So she's sort of that type of character, and it follows and it builds and and there's a lot of fantasy elements. I borrowed a lot of, just as Tolkien did, I
Yeah.
borrowed a lot of elements from classic fantasy and literature and
Well, I think when authors say like they
mythologies.
borrow, it's almost like we write what we know, we write what we've experienced, so it becomes part of us, and then we transform it into something we can use.
Yes, yes, very much so. There's a giant in it, and I kind of put in a little thinly disguised analogy to the Jack and the Beanstalk thing,
Ah,
because my
I always
characters
like that story.
scale a mountain. There's a castle on top of the mountain, which is above the clouds, and there's a giant in the castle. So,
The book was written and done, completed a couple years ago. But did you know you were going to write a sequel to it?
no, no.
How did this come up?
That was considered.
Because it is interesting as a writer, you think you're like one and done.
Yes,
with the
yeah,
book,
I
and then
did
you're
this
like,
great
"Oh."
climax ending to it, with the typical fantasy story, the great battle, and well, I won't say who wins, but we can
Okay.
pretty much guess that.
Yeah, buy the book and read it.
Yes, and then I don't know, it just started. I've been thinking about it, and I did leave some, open-ended plot lines in it, just in a case that I might want to write a sequel.
Okay, so
sometime.
there's a couple seeds planted.
Yeah, and they germinated.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
germinated. And once my mind starts going on a creative thing,
Yeah.
it's kind of like takes over. It's almost like a mental illness. I mean, really. I mean, I should be in therapy because
Well, I always say, writers, that's, we write what we need, and that helps us to express ourselves, and it is therapy in itself.
Yeah.
And then the people who read it, who knows, it could be therapy to them, or it could be, especially your story could be like an escape, you know what I mean? Like an escape from reality, like take me to this fantasy world and let me meet, giants and, elves and all of this stuff.
I like to think it's a little bit of both because there is things in there that people will find soothing, and that they can think, yeah, that's a way of looking at it that I didn't think of, and and you can kind of apply it to other things in
Yeah.
real life. So
Oh, yeah. Well, I always say, like, stories that can be parables to our lives. So I know you brought an excerpt to read from the new book, and I think I want to introduce this here because it's going to show a little bit of the story, the first story, your prose, but then it's going to bring us into a little poetry, not to spoil it, but he's got a really great poem in there.
yes.
So do you want to read that?
I certainly would. Okay.
And is there a title for the next book that you're working on? Is there a working title yet?
I'm tentatively thinking Return to Druidwood. That seems like the logical way
Yeah.
to go, but that'll when it's finished.
Oh, I know.
Probably.
It's like the titles change as you're working on something. I always call it the whip word. I go, it's the whip title, work in progress title, and
yes.
it'll change. But
Yes.
right now, that's what it is.
That's what we're on.
All right. With no further ado, let's listen
Okay.
in.
So, the crackling fire and sizzling sausages played a comforting countermeasure to the disturbing nighttime sounds. As the Smallfoot swallowed the last bit of his dinner, licking the grease from his fingertips, Kane started humming a tune. When he finished, Falmo asked him where he heard the song, as it sounded vaguely familiar. It's a tune that Rowena often plays on her harp. She promised to teach me how to play it on her instrument someday. Do you know any songs, my friend? Falmo hesitated for a moment. I'm not so sure that I have a voice for singing. No one has ever taught me anything about music. Yet I do sometimes scribble bits of poetry. I would like very much to hear some, the monk cocked his head. Falmo felt a self-conscious blush coming on, and was glad that the flickering firelight would likely hide it. I'm not sure I can remember anything on the spot, although I have been composing something in my head as we've traveled. The Smallfoot took a deep breath and began. That empty space, where something used to be, where something once stood tall, amongst what we still see, that empty, lonely place, where once there stood a tree, where once a living being somehow chanced to be, where something fair once grew, a life somehow took hold, that lovely speck of green, where leaf did first unfold, where branch did seek the sun, and root did stir the mold, an epic living tome, where stories bide untold, where haunted empty space is all that's left to see, that presence now erased. Where in reality? Where does the living go? Someplace there must be. What deity embraced the soul that fate set free? Falmo bowed his head, when he finished, to better hide his blush, as well as the tear that had snuck onto his cheek. "That's it," he mumbled. "Not much of a poem. I just can't stop thinking about that old tree. It's really so ordinary of a thing, yet I felt like it was a part of the story of my life, and now that page is ripped away forever. It was no ordinary tree. It was a part of me." Kane sat silently, his head bowed and deep in thought. The whole forest seemed to have become silent, listening. Suddenly, a deep voice spoke in the darkness, seeming to come from no discernible direction, as though it came from the ground itself. "No ordinary tree. You are a kindly little fellow. We will remember that." Then utter silence enveloped him once more as the booming words echoed in his mind.
Wow. Yeah, very very reflective and sad. I feel grief, there's grief in there with the whole tree and the symbolicness of just, people, in life that are there, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And the shadow of the memory of that tree still being there, and the people in our life who go before us.
That's kind of what got me thinking about it when I wrote the poem. It's that we think of everything that we see and that's positive and that's there, but there's always that other side, where there's something isn't there, and there's a shadow, there's that space,
You definitely see a lot of Thomas John Skarzynski here, like when you were talking about like the inspiration of writing the poem in the shower, like, as the character says, oh, sometimes on my travels I, think about poetry, or, I don't think I should sing,
Yes.
so it's like, yeah, I mean, lyrics are, poetry are lyrics, but, for those with good voices, they can sing them. For others, we just write them.
We just write them, yes.
We just write them.
Yeah, Falmo's like my favorite. He's like my main point of view character for this particular version of the story.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously a lot of the writer goes into the characters, and especially the point of view characters.
Oh, maybe it'll be a musical. Get them to sing it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we heard about your writing process as far as doing poetry and how spontaneous it comes, and in that moment. But like as far as when you were rewriting this, the Elf, the Druid, and the Unicorn into the Journey of Druidwood, what's that process like for you to write or edit, whichever you want to talk about?
Yeah. The main thing what sparked me to start it was, as I said, I had written that for my daughter when she was very young.
Okay.
I have a great granddaughter now, who was
Wow.
about the age that she was when I wrote that. And there's a unicorn in this story.
Well, we
And
always
she's-
love unicorns.
Yes, and she's I think she's like 5 or 6 and very precocious, and obviously she just loves her unicorns.
Yeah.
So I said, I can rewrite the story and do it for her, and I can make it a little bit better because I actually know how to write now.
Well, and it's important to know who your audience is, and sometimes they do say like to have that one person in mind. I mean, sometimes writers can write thinking this huge audience is listening, but sometimes if it's just that one person, like your daughter, your granddaughter, you really get to focus in and really just be authentic with it.
Yes. Yeah, so I took the story, and I always liked it because it was the first time, even though I've always made up stories in my head and whatnot, it's the first time I actually wrote a full-length actual story. And although the grammar and the spelling and the syntax and everything was really, really bad.
No. First draft, you don't worry about any of
Yes.
that.
But even second, third, I just didn't have the skill back then, honestly. But I did know how to produce a story, and all the right elements were in it. There was characters. They did have some amount of development. There was conflict and resolution, and
Did you come up with that stuff before you were writing, like knowing you were going to put those conflict and resolutions
No.
in, or just
No,
it just came?
Just when I get started writing, it works. The nuts and bolts stuff. It took a lot of learning and a lot of self-discipline, and no, I got to do this right. And
So now you've published with a publisher.
yep.
And we can talk about when you went to the publisher, did you query them? Did you go to them and say, I want you to help me publish this, and what did they offer you?
Okay, so I actually got to go back to this.
Okay.
Because the Druidwood story, I had never published anything up there. Well, I had things published in like small magazines and
You've
newsletters
done
and all
plenty
that
of
sort
writing
thing.
that's published.
Yes, but I had never actually published a book. And I said, okay, well, I thought about trying to find an agent and all that stuff, and I've talked to a few friends that have done some writing, and they say it can take up to 6 years for your book to actually come out.
Yeah.
And I'm in my 70s. It's like, I don't know if I got 6 years. So wait.
I hear you.
I decided to explore self-publishing, which is totally alien to me. And we had a couple of friends that do some writing, Vincent and Megay, and they helped us out. They were amazing.
And when you say we, you're talking about you and your wife.
Me and my
I know
wife,
you guys
yeah,
are like
yeah.
a
We're,
yeah.
we're always a team.
I don't think he's thinking he's more people, but I know him and his wife. I mean, they're always together as a team.
And so they were just amazing. They walked us through the whole process and helped with the formatting was. I almost want to say a word I probably shouldn't say here, but you can understand where I'm going with that.
Yes.
But we got through it, and we got it out, and we self-published that and put it on Amazon, the whole bit, and it's out there, and it's sold. I've made my money back on it and made a couple of bucks. It's
That's
not really
good. Congratulations.
I don't expect to be buying a mansion anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, we write for the love of it, not for the not for to line our pockets, but to line our hearts and other people's hearts. So yeah, I mean, and that is the thing. We write a book, and then we have to figure out how to publish the book, and then you're right, like the editing and the formatting is a whole other can of worms to open up and get through. So you really have to do it for the love of the story and getting it done. And then there's a whole nother chapter after publishing it, which is marketing the book.
Yes, if I thought I was bad at the publishing at the publishing and formatting and all that, marketing is much worse. I'm not a natural at that. I'm kind of an introvert.
And your wife's a good promoter, so she helps you, like, when you're at book signings.
Yes.
Or
I couldn't do that stuff without
events
her.
And things.
I tend to, you're very good. You're very personable and easy to talk to.
I like to talk to everybody. I'm very curious. Yes. I like to know a lot.
But most people aren't that outgoing, and when I run into those kind of people, I just kind of like, turn into a wallflower, and I'm gonna go over here now.
So, what are some of the ways that you've marketed your books? Let's share that with some of the authors out there.
I've gotten it out to a few small bookstores, indie bookstores basically, and there's a place in. Should I go into the places that I was got to?
Yeah, you can if your books are there. Yeah.
Okay. There's a place called Wandering Moon in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts.
Okay.
That was the first place I put out because they're friends of ours, and they have a small shop out there.
That's nice.
It's not even really a bookstore, but they sell some books, and they do kind of like they have like kind of a magic theme. I'm thinking, well, this is a book about druids.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that's like a good way to go in there.
Yeah,
the unicorns.
I'm not even sure if anything's sold out of that yet, and it's been there a while. And then the poetry group, I do a lot of like poetry open mic meetings, and there's a whole poetry community that I've touched base with.
Do you go to the one in Chicopee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's places all over the place. And
I know Don Fisher does a good one in Chicopee. He's actually been on this program with the Springfield write-up, because I always do talk about, and I know you believe this too, but like writers groups are so important for writers to share their work. And some people are afraid to share their work. But it's so important because when you're reading it out loud, it sounds different to you, and it also allows other people to give you some insight, Yes.
It is it was therapeutic for me. Because as I said, I'm a very extreme introvert. And you can probably tell by a little bit of stuttering that's sneaking into my voice occasionally. But that got me up there on stages and speaking in front of people, and it just I learned. I grew to feel natural with it, and
And that's the part of publishing and marketing that authors don't realize that. And a lot of authors are introverts. That's why we're writing in the quiet of our own home, and we're hoarding our work and sometimes not sharing it. But it's like, in order to market the work later, you have to come out of the binding.
Yes.
You got to come out of the bindings, because you have to start, really being, and I always hate using the word like a narcissist, but you have to be the one to say, hey, let me read an excerpt from my book. Let me tell you about it, buy this book. And, with your poetry book, I mean, that's something that you definitely have done a lot with, the sharing your poetry at poetry readings, things like that. And we have this frame on the table, and I don't want to forget to get to this, because you have written poems that artists have now taken and made them into greeting cards.
Yes, I have an artist friend her name's N.A. McConkey, and she's a wonderful artist, and she writes too, but her main thing is art.
Yeah.
And she is doing a gallery show and they had a theme of yellow, and she asked me, "Can you know?" And they wanted to pair words with this, so she knew I write poetry. So, could you write a poem that I could do something with this? So and it actually ended up being a fairly long poem, which she was kind of a little trepidatious about at first, but she made it work, and she did this beautiful artwork around it, and it ended up winning first prize in the gallery, and for a pretty substantial amount of money too. It's like the most money I've ever made in my writing.
Wow, nice. We like hearing when we make money.
We did a contract and everything, and we split it up. And she sells, like, she does cards and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, her artwork is beautiful because, I mean, here, I'm going to turn it this way, but, you know, it's like you have the water and the sun and, you know.
Actually, the moon.
I mean, the moon, yeah. Well,
the name of the poem is Attraction. It's basically.
The sun's a reflection of the moon.
That's based on the attraction of the moon to the sea and how it draws the tides. And I just kind of gave them personalities.
Yeah.
And she said that's her best-selling card.
It's beautiful.
And for some reason, she says all the women love it.
No, it really.
She said she's actually had women to ask her if I'm married.
Oh.
Which I'm not sure how my wife feels.
Look at
about
that. They're falling in love with the artist. Not the man, the artist there. But.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Oh, that's so great. So, you know, I'm so glad that you came on. Now you have this. When is this next book coming out? What's our hope?
With a hope, I'd say maybe about a year. That's about what it took to write that.
Yeah.
And
that's the realistic thing,
yes,
you know,
yes.
so people need to understand that it does take, you know, it can take up to a year. I mean, it can take up to, 10 months, like a pregnancy, dear baby, get out. Like, it's like you got to incubate it, you got to, nurture it, get it out, edit it, format it.
And as we've said, I went through a publisher for my second book, for the poetry book, and he was a friend of mine. It was Robert Perry that I met, and he started a small
Yeah, and
press.
where is he?
He's in Webster, Mass.
Right. And what's the name of his company? I know I wrote this.
Metaphysical Fox
Thank
Press.
you,
Metaphysical Fox
Yes.
Press. And so I went through him, and that was a big help because I still had to do a lot of formatting, and because I basically took, like, I don't know how many, at least 100 poems, and went through them and edited it down, figure out the ones that are going to work best. And I didn't just, like, throw a bunch of poems out there. This book is basically like 6 different chapbooks put together.
Nice.
There's just themes for each section. So there's like love poems and scary poems.
Yeah, and you have like
fantasy poems.
Is it the table of contents that tells you how they're all grouped together, which is really nice. Yeah.
If I can show you really quickly.
Because I always like a table of contents. I don't know.
I think you're better at showing things than I am in this format.
So. But it is like Lover's Lane, and you have all of these poems, and and they are in order, so you don't have to skip around.
Yes.
So like you said, they are like the chapbook. But I love the spacing of it. I love the simplicity of reading it, because some books can get a little dizzy and stuff.
Yes.
And you do have some artwork in it, and the same with your other books. So
that by the way is my wife when we first met. So.
She just glows. She's radiating.
Yep.
So where can people get this book? Where can they find?
They're both on
the
Amazon.
Books, and where can they get information about you?
And they're both. Well, that one never made it to the Wandering Moon in Shelburne Falls.
Okay.
Which it really wasn't a bookstore either. But this is available at the Book Lovers Gourmet in Webster, Mass, and also at I believe it's called the Next Chapter in West Springfield.
Oh, yes.
It's a new store.
Yes.
So both of those books are available there, and of course through me.
Okay.
If you want to look me up, I actually.
What's your site?
Pardon me?
Your email, your site.
Okay, it's my site is it's basically just a page.
Okay.
It's Tom's Tomes, Stories and Poems.
Okay. Well,
but if you look that up, you can get to me, and I'd be more than happy. I'll ship them. You actually even given shipping costs, you make more money selling them yourself than you do through Amazon.
You definitely do. And here we are on page 57. Stories are like trails. They often take us far. I love that. That's a great first line. Thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best with everything that you're doing. I'm excited to hear and read more of your poetry and more of your work that's upcoming. And I think the audience is really grateful that you shared your journey, because as an introvert, you really come out of your binding today.
Well, thank you. Well, that reflects your skills as an interviewer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, like you said, you can find these books on Amazon. I'll put the links below. So definitely, support our local authors. We need that.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on, Tom. And I thank you, the audience, for tuning in every week to different episodes of yWrite, or perhaps you are binge watching this all day long, episode after episode after episode. And not only finding out what kind of books have been written that are out there for you to read, but to find out the stories behind those books and why the authors are writing what they're writing, how they're doing it, and, more importantly, why you should write your story. So today we talked a little bit about writing prose, we talked about writing poetry, and sometimes you can just catch something in the air to write, and sometimes you need a writing prompt for it. So this is the time of the program that I'm going to give you your writing prompt. And whether you're into fantasy or not, sometimes when we just sit there, we close our eyes for a minute, we can start thinking about, I don't know, elves, leprechauns, angels, and start thinking about them. Have a little imaginary conversation in your head with them and write it down. And who knows, maybe you're gonna write the lyrics to the next great song in a poem, or maybe you're just gonna write a short story that you can share with your grandchildren or children or with yourself. So keep writing, keep watching, and thank you so much for tuning in to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout. See you next time.